What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Round the Track with the Riders NASCAR podcast, featuring myself, SterlingRider, and as always, Duke Rider.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? We told you we would come and give you a show when the trial was over. And to our surprise, pleasant surprise, I might add, it's ended. It ended last Thursday in a way that I don't know about you, but I didn't see it ending that way. Leading up into the trial and through the first half of the trial, I did not see them coming to an agreement and settling the case out of court, so to speak. I didn't see that happening.
I
I
know
just really didn't.
it's definitely a surprise. I know I was just sitting here playing games with a couple of buddies, and you just texted me, they settled in all caps, and I was like, huh? I was like, that's a shocker. But yeah, fair enough. They somehow settled. Of course, I feel like if the trial had continued on, NASCAR would just keep digging themselves a hole because they were already digging a hole pretty deeply already.
Right.
If you go and read a lot of the tweets about what they said, so yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Not only the tweets, but in my opinion, and if you guys want an in detailed look at all of the testimony and everything, go and follow the teardown on wherever you get your podcasts. They did at least an hour long show every day of the trial, and went through what happened those days, and how those days seemed to go, and how who was questioned and how they were questioned. And it started on Monday, um, 2 weeks ago today. Today's Monday. So 2 weeks ago today, the trial started. It started with them getting a jury selected. They did get a jury selected, um, and surprisingly, they went in and they had, I forget how many. I think it was 30 people that they had to kind of to dwindle down to nine. You had six jurors and then three alternates. And out of those 30 people, there wasn't a whole lot of NASCAR fans. And that's kind of shocking and surprising, with that being the Charlotte, North Carolina area, which is the hub of NASCAR. I mean, so, but they were able to come to a decision on that. And then first up, they put Denny Hamlin on the stand. Of course, before court proceedings started, each side was able to select one company person to sit in. NASCAR chose Jim France, and the teams chose Michael Jordan, to sit in on all the testimony. Um, so, in order for Denny to be able to sit in on the rest of the testimony, he had to be the first witness. So they questioned him Monday and then into Tuesday. Um, and it seemed to be a fairly long um, session, but Denny. They kind of put Denny up there, since there weren't a lot of NASCAR fans on the jury. They put Denny up there to kind of explain what a NASCAR season looks like,
mm-hmm.
what a NASCAR team looks like, and he did a really good job kind of explaining it and breaking it down for people that didn't know. Um, then they put Steve Phelps on. I believe it was Steve Phelps. He testified. Then they put Michael Jordan on. He testified. I think his testimony only lasted like an hour.
Yeah,
Um, so then they had their experts. They put Bob Jenkins on the stand, who's the owner of Front Row Motorsports. They put him on the stand. Then they put their experts on the stand. They had Steve O'Donnell on the stand for a period of time. And these are all plaintiff. These are all witnesses that the teams called, um, to kind of get. And the reason, if you listen to the teardown, they had a lawyer on there, and the reason she explained, the reason that they call people that you would expect to be defense witnesses is because they're able to question them. Then they have the cross examination by the defense, and then the plaintiffs are able to question them again. So it gave them an opportunity to get up and to give a rebuttal to anything that the NASCAR attorneys were able to ask Phelps and O'Donnell to try to, make sure that the truth was coming out, so to speak. And then it got down to their final witness for the prosecution was Richard Childress, or for the plaintiffs, not really the prosecution. I'm thinking of a criminal trial, but for the plaintiffs was Richard Childress. And we discussed on our last show, if y'all listen to that, the text messages about Richard Childress. And what NASCAR had to say about that. Of course, they were not entering that into evidence, which is why we got to look at them before the trial started. But we did find out some very, very interesting stuff. And the reason I'm talking about this is because they're having to go back to court this week. The 2311 Front Row Motorsports versus NASCAR trial has been settled.
Mm-hmm.
But there is still a part of this trial that they're having to go to court for this week. Because, to my surprise, Richard Childress has a silent partner that owns 40% of Richard Childress Racing, and they have been trying to get out. So Richard was looking for somebody to come in and buy them out, and there was part of the deal was that he owned 60%, and that he was going to sell part of his 60% to this investor. We don't know how much. We don't know if he was going to sell 9%, make him a 51-49 owner. If he was going to sell 5%, make him 55%, them 45. I mean, that was not. They didn't disclose any of that. But it was disclosed that it was Bobby Hillin Jr., who is a former driver himself in NASCAR, had put together a group to buy this percentage of Richard Childress Racing. Unfortunately, he had they weren't able to come up with the money that Richard and his partners were wanting. So Richard, sent him a letter saying that hey, we're not selling because you're not going to be able to come up with the finances for this. And then they had Bobby Hillin Jr. and his team sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means that legally they're not allowed to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how NASCAR's lawyers got this information is what's up for debate. The team's lawyers want to know where this information comes from, because they're like, hey, Richard volunteered to come and testify on our behalf, so in order to protect him and his interests, we need to find out where this information comes from so that Richard can decide what he's going to do, because if it came from somebody that signed the non-disclosure agreements, Richard can now take them to court and have a lawsuit against them as well. Whereas the overall lawsuit has been settled, there is still something that needs to be worked out. Now, Judge Bell, which we've kind of noticed since the beginning, since this whole thing made it in front of him, he's a no-nonsense judge. He told the teams and NASCAR to work this out many times before it made it to trial. He told them to work it out while they were in trial. And he is reporters in the courtroom after they dismissed the jury, and he told them that they need to get this figured out, because if they come to him without a solution, he already knows what he's going to do. So whatever that's going to look like, I don't know. I would assume just from his reaction to all this that he's probably going to make NASCAR's attorneys disclose where they got that information. That would be kind of what I would assume he's going to do. But I didn't see that coming. That was kind of and Richard Childress didn't either, because when he was on the stand, they said he became very agitated when this information came out, because they were trying to make it seem like he was trying to get out, and he was like, "No, I'm not trying to sell my business. I'm trying to keep my business alive, and the people that I have that are investing currently, they want out. I was trying to find somebody to buy them out, but you're not supposed to know that, because the deal fell through and there was agreements signed and apparently agreements not followed through with." So that's kind of a sidebar, is to use a legal term, a sidebar out of this lawsuit that we didn't see coming, that could lead to another lawsuit that we have to cover and talk about. But the defense, NASCAR, did have one witness. They had an expert witness that they did get on the stand when their part of the trial started, and that was late Wednesday afternoon of last week. And then they came back Thursday morning, and before the jury was brought in, they were like, we could possibly be settling this. Give us another hour or so, Judge. And the judge agreed, gave them an hour. It took them about an hour and a half to hash out all the details. And they came back in and they said, we do have a settlement. We're waiting on them to finish basically typing it up. And then when we get done, we'll get you a copy. They got the judge the copy. All of the NASCAR people that were there covering the trial came out, and they were like, he took his time and he read the entire agreement before he agreed that was a good settlement. Was very happy. Seemed like he was very happy with the agreement. Now we don't have all the details of that agreement. But before we get into that, what do you think about, first off, the Richard Childress thing? And then what do you think about the fact that they did settle and that they waited until it was NASCAR's turn to be, to bring their witnesses before they did settle? What do you think what's all your thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, with the Richard Childress thing, that one's kind of surprising. Just because, I understand from a, business owner standpoint why, trying to find a replacement for his private investor, to kind of swap out. And then, I understand not all the time business deals go through, so you gotta, deny it or whatever the case may be. But trying to figure out where that information came from and how NASCAR got their hands on that is very confusing because, there's a document stating that nobody except for those involved in the deal could talk about it. So either they did some illegal digging or somebody opened their mouth around the wrong people talking about it. So either way, that's interesting. Kind of just going to have to play the waiting game to figure out how that ends up being concluded. For the settlement issue, like I said at the beginning, kind of surprising. I know there was a chance for it. Reading the tweets and things, there were a lot of people saying that settlement was still a good option. And like you said, Judge Bell had pushed for it pretty much daily. With waiting for NASCAR with that, I think that was a somewhat smart move, especially with bringing some of the NASCAR, what do you call them?
Media?
Not media, the people. O'Donnell, Phelps, all them.
Oh, the leadership?
Yeah, bringing leadership in from the team sides first. That's a smart move. I won't disagree with that move because then you can immediately ask them from the team standpoint, and it kind of puts them in the crosshairs, I guess, as you could say, immediately, especially with a lot of their answers and I know a lot of the scene text messages and things we've heard and their testimonies even just kind of, like I said, dug themselves in a deep hole. So smart move all in all. Happy they settled. Glad it's over. Didn't have to wait for the trial to kind of drag out, seeing where it would go. But yeah, glad it's over.
Yeah, so and almost forgot about this. The night before they settled, of course, Richard Childress had been on the stand on Wednesday, and on Wednesday evening, Johnny Morris, the owner of Bass Pro Shops, released a letter, really kind of coming down hard on NASCAR leadership and how they should be embarrassed by what they said about Richard Childress and how
Yep.
they disrespected him with the tweets that came out. When you look at the trial as a whole, and like I said, if you really want to know a lot of those details, go and check out the teardown with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi because they really broke it down. Um, I didn't hear anything that made NASCAR look good in this situation. Nothing at all. None of the testimony made NASCAR look good. Some of the testimony was it kind of didn't put the teams in a positive light, but most of the testimonies put the teams and their efforts and the things that they were doing in somewhat of a positive light. But nothing, not even NASCAR's own leadership with O'Donnell and Phelps, and even Jim France's testimony, because the prosecution called Jim France or the plaintiffs. So not even his side of the story looked good for NASCAR. So I can understand why NASCAR settled because when it got to their turn, and their financial expert wasn't able to really rebuff the team's financial expert. Um, so it really, from an observer's side, had I been on the jury, of course, I know a lot more about NASCAR than the jurors did apparently, but um, from everything I heard, the jury had to be favoring NASCAR or favoring the teams, and I think NASCAR realized that. And then when that letter from Johnny Morris came out, um, it took NASCAR. NASCAR already had a black eye, and Johnny Morris's letter was kind of a punch in the jaw, um, to NASCAR. So them coming in Thursday, I think everybody was surprised that they settled, um, especially with what we got out of the settlement. We have permanent charters now. They're called evergreen charters, but they are permanent charters, um, which is a big deal. That's one of the four pillars that you hear about that the teams were asking for was permanent charters. They were given 2/3 of the teams that had already signed the charter agreement had to agree to these new um, provisions in the charter agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But permanent charters. The teams that did not agree had at least a year, probably more, to sell their charters if they chose, and the percentage of the sale of those charters was upped from 2% to 10% for NASCAR. So basically, NASCAR is going to get a bigger cut of charter sales. Um, and the teams, in order to keep their charter, though, they are going to have to have some sort of performance standards that they're going to have to meet. They're going to have to be at every race. They're going to have to qualify for every race, and so on and so forth. And on the charter side of it, or the permanent charter side of it, we did get that, which you and I have talked about at length on this show. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make entry into the sport a lot tougher? Yes. It's going to be really hard for a Dale Earnhardt Jr. now to get into the Cup Series as a full-time team, chartered team. So, but in the end, it's going to be like an NBA franchise, an NFL franchise. Once you own it, you own it. NASCAR cannot come in 7 years and say, well, we're doing away with this. So Before we go on to other things that they got, what are your thoughts on permanent charters?
Huge win for the teams, huge win for the fans. Like you said, this is a big thing we've been talking about, and a lot of looking at a lot of the charter agreements. I understand certain parts of it before it was permanent, with TV deals being, kind of being up in the air and, sponsorships and all that. But the permanent charters is going to help in the long run. Because as you said, once you own it, you own it. NASCAR can no longer come in and take over just because they're mad at you for some reason or whatever. So don't have to worry about, really just paper mache going around with the charters anymore. And, endless amounts of money when one team's trying to sell one, probably. I'm sure it's still going to be lots of money if a permanent charter is sold to someone else, but I'm sure there's more in depth with that side of things if and whenever that comes up in the future. But yeah, permanent charters, big win for the teams. It's good to know that the teams are now set and not gonna have to run in any railroad tracks from now on with that.
And on that note of permanent charters, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports do have their charters back.
Yes.
So that's a very important thing that we need to mention. Excuse me. There is, as part of the charter agreement, there will be negotiations, financial negotiations. Every time there's a new media rights deal, they're going to have to go in and discuss how that works. Kind of like I mentioned, like the other major sports leagues do.
Right.
That the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, they've been doing this TV contract stuff for years. So, that's not a surprise that that's how they're doing. They also got put back in, which had been, and I didn't know anything about this until this lawsuit came out. But what they used to have in the old charter system, they used to have what they called the 3 strikes rule, which means that the teams, if there was something, a rule change or whatever that the teams did not want, NASCAR could bring it to them 3 times. If it got shot down all 3 times, then NASCAR they wouldn't be able to bring it to them again. That is back, but now it's 5 times. 5 strike. Now it's a 5 strike. So basically NASCAR can come up with an idea, run it by the teams up to 5 times. If the teams continue to say no, then it's not going to happen. And I think there's a majority rule thing on that.
Yeah.
Like 2/3 if 2/3 of the team approve, it doesn't matter what the other 1/3 of the team wants. They're going to have to do it anyway. So, and my understanding, the only time that was ever used was with the Roval. But NASCAR went ahead, even though the teams told them no 3 times. NASCAR still went ahead and did it anyway. So it's not like that was a big win. And there was some other things I cannot remember, and I did not pull it up. But there was an undisclosed amount of money that was given to 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. We don't know, how much that was. That was, probably a NDA type thing, non-disclosure agreement. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, the teams got a lot of what they wanted. And that's not a bad thing. But there's still, in my opinion, needs to be some changes in the NASCAR system. Of course, we've got a new format coming, a championship format coming, which we don't know what that's going to be. I did see that there is some dirt track series that are going back to full season points.
Mm-hmm.
They tried playoffs, it didn't work. They're going back. Hopefully, that is a
hint.
A hint for NASCAR that's what. If that's what the local short track racers want, that's obviously going to be what the NASCAR fans want. So that's supposed to probably be announced in January. But I think with Steve O'Donnell and Steve Phelps putting NASCAR in the position that they were put, especially with the text messages that came out, there needs to be a change of leadership at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a headhunter. I don't like calling for somebody to be fired. But in this situation, in my opinion, Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell have got to go. They have made NASCAR look really, 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 really bad. The NASCAR settled in court, in the real courts, but in the court of public opinion, they lost serious. I mean, it was a terrible, tragic loss for NASCAR in the court of public opinion when all of those text messages came out. Even people that were not fans of Richard Childress were coming to Richard's defense. Because the shots that NASCAR took were shots at all of us. Richard Childress was called a stupid redneck. They said that NASCAR fans don't read or don't know how to read. That's a shot directly at the fans. That's not at a driver or a team owner. That's a shot directly at the fans. And that just, yes, the teams won the lawsuit. But if there is not a change of leadership at the top of NASCAR, the fans will still lose.
Yep.
In my opinion, there has to be a change because we need people that are in NASCAR leadership that are a voice for the fans. And the thing is, if they come out in January and announce, hey, we're going to do a 10-race chase. We're going to go back to the 10-race chase, or we're going to do a 3-3-4 format, playoff format. We listen to our fans, and this is what we're doing. If they come out with that, it will be one of the final nails in the coffin for a lot of fans who are just waiting for this final straw to drop. And if it is the straw that breaks the camel's back, I don't think NASCAR will recover.
No.
I think the only way that NASCAR will be able to redeem anything from overall fan perspective is if they come out with a full season points championship and O'Donnell and Phelps go. That's just my thoughts on that, just to kind of wrap this up in a bow, Christmas time.
I mean, no, I completely agree. O'Donnell and Phelps made themselves look like clowns. Of course, they've kind of been making themselves look like clowns since the beginning, but they really put the makeup and the big red nose and the big old flipping red shoes on during all that as well. So I agree. Needs to be a change in leadership. They definitely need to make sure they consider the championship running, however they decide to go with that. Make sure they really do listen to the fans. Otherwise, they're going to lose tons and tons of fans. It's not looking good, and it's not going to look good unless there's the right changes. I mean, you've watched the sport for the longest time, and throughout many years, you've seen, especially once they started the chase format, a lot of fans quit watching just because of that, and they've lost many more over the years. I know Kenny Wallace would disagree with us, but I don't think Kenny Wallace is looking at the facts very well. So, yeah.
No, because you go from 20 million fans every week down to you're barely hitting 1.5 million?
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me that the sport is healthy? That's not healthy, in my opinion.
No, not at all. So definitely needs to be a change with leadership. Definitely need to make sure they're seeing everything the fans are saying, and not just the fans. Listen to listen to drivers and team owners. We got former drivers, Mark Martin, very big voice for the fans. You got Dell Jr., O'Reilly's. I'll try to get that going now. O'Reilly's team owner, big popular driver back when he drove for Cup, still well known by people that aren't NASCAR fans. That's how popular he was. A huge voice for us as well. So I know there's a lot of former drivers, team owners, even current ones, still on the fan side here. So need a change in leadership. And listen to the fans to turn this downhill slope back to a very good uphill slope.
And you've got sponsors too. I mean, we've got Johnny Morris with Bass Pro Shops. Johnny Morris and Bass Pro Shops are a big part of NASCAR sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
They sponsor teams. You saw them almost every week. You saw him on Chase Briscoe's car,
right?
The 19 car. You saw him. You saw them on the number 3 of Austin Dillon quite a bit the past several years. Johnny Morris sponsors. They sponsor the Bristol Night Race every fall. They sponsor track activities. I mean, they're just a huge sponsor and supporter of the sport of NASCAR. And you got this sponsor owner that's saying, I don't like this.
Yep.
I don't like how you're treating one of my good friends. Johnny could go into the boardroom tomorrow and say, you know what? We're done. We're not sponsoring NASCAR anymore. NASCAR shot themselves in the foot with us.
Yep.
Okay, that leaves Richard Childress with a hole in his sponsorship. That leaves Joe Gibbs Racing with a major hole in their sponsorship. NASCAR is going to have to go look for some race sponsors to cover the Bass Pro Shops races. It's going to put a hole in Junior Motorsports sponsorship. And then I'm pretty sure Johnny is friends with other sponsors. So what if he starts making phone calls and those sponsors start talking about, well, we don't like this either. We don't appreciate how they treat our fans and our drivers. And they're not going to do it. They're not going to change leadership. Okay, we're going to pull out. And then the next thing you know, you've got NASCAR bleeding sponsorships again, because we had this problem back in the early 2010s where sponsors are they're going away. They're going away. I mean, teams are shutting down because they're losing their sponsors. Geico moved from a team to sponsor NASCAR. That team shut down. 5 Hour Energy left. 5 Hour Energy left, and then shut a team down. With Furniture Row Racing. You get major sponsors that leave. The next thing you know, there's teams are shutting down because they don't have the money to operate. Well, when you have sponsors saying, well, we're not going to sponsor these races anymore, then NASCAR has to go find sponsors. Now they've got to explain to the people that they're going after, yes, our leaders did say that about that team owner, but we don't feel like that anymore. Do you think the sponsors are going to listen?
No.
I mean, so this is, right, exactly. So this is, without a change in leadership, NASCAR faces a uphill battle that I'm not sure they're going to be able to do.
Right. Yeah, and it only takes that very first person to start the ball to roll. So if one sponsor goes out, you could imagine how many might actually start pulling their plugs too, just because of that. So, yeah.
So, yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, if you really want to know details, like I said, go and listen to the teardown. Um, if you don't want to listen to it in regular speed, speed your podcast up. um, I listen to it on like 1.75 times speed because most of them were like an hour and 25 to an hour and 45 minutes. So but yeah, they did a really good job covering the trial. All of the NASCAR media. There was so much NASCAR media that covered this trial. So you got different perspectives from all of them. You had Bob Pockrass, Kelly Crandall, Matt Weaver, Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck. I know I'm going to leave some out. Jenna Fryer. Golly, I can't even mention. I can't even seem to name. I'm sorry if I left your name out. But there's, I mean, so many NASCAR media that's on social media. They work for other media outlets. But what they do for us fans through social media and their podcasts and the newspapers or magazines. Well, they don't really have any magazines or TV networks or whatever that they work for, because like Bob Pockrass works for Fox and stuff like that. So, but without them, the fan today would be so uneducated as to what's going on, because we don't have those monthly magazines anymore that we used to, like Circle Track and Stock Car Racing Magazine and the Scene, the NASCAR Winston Cup Scene and stuff like that. We used to have those that would come out weekly, and some of them, most of them came out monthly, but some of them came out weekly that would give us all that NASCAR news. So we just appreciate all of our NASCAR journalists and what they do for the fans so much. So we just appreciate them and want to thank them for their coverage of this trial and for keeping us informed going into the off season. Again, we're expecting the point system announcement in January. We'll come back at you guys in January with our preseason show where we'll cover new faces and new places. We'll cover the championship format, what we like, what we don't like, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be stuff, even if they do a full season, there's going to be parts of it that we don't really like. But we'll be back with all that in January. Until then, we got the off season to enjoy.
Absolutely. So that is the final podcast episode of the year. So as DudeRider said, stay tuned for our preseason at the end of January for the next season to come out. Make sure you go check out everybody. Just mentioned all their X profiles are in the link down below, so you can go read up on a lot of the news. And also make sure you go check out the Teardown podcast where they went over things daily. But yeah, that's all the big hits. A lot of good things for the teams. But still some things needed for the fans in NASCAR to clean up there. So, yeah, that's going to be it for the season. So enjoy the off season. Enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And all that jazz. Yeah, make sure to check out the sponsors. You got W Gearless Injury Blend. Rankest Rope Ranch, where follow Him Apparel and Undrdog Athletix. All links down in the description down below with what code to use at checkout. I know Dubby is just released gaming mouse pads, brand new there. They're pretty cool. Also about to release another anime collab. This will be the third anime collab, so if you're a nerd like me, be on the lookout for that. That is releasing tomorrow. the 16th, as today is the 15th. That being said, any other final words there, Duke Rider?
No, just outside of telling everybody Merry Christmas, have a safe and happy New Year. And as of today, there are 62 days until the Daytona 500.
Already counting down. Let's go. All right. Well, that being said, you guys have a blessed rest of your year and a blessed New Year. Merry Christmas. And we will see you in the next one. That being said, be bold, share Jesus, and ride on.